For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, we are live and amplified. So let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome, everybody, to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quat, and we're back at it again with another amazing podcast. Don't worry, don't adjust your dials, however you're consuming us. It is Tuesday morning. I am intending to be on here. It is not Sunday morning, so have no fear. We have a very special guest. We have Kezia Gill joining us today. We'll be chatting about the British Country Music Festival and her music, and she just got done playing a festival this past weekend, so she's very busy, and I'm excited to sit down and chat with her and get to know more about her. But before we get there, I just wanted to take a second to thank everybody for joining us and tuning in, and all the continued support we've had over the last several years of the podcast, and especially the last 6 months or so with the transfer from Facebook to Twitch as part of our live streaming platform. And so all of y'all that have been sitting here supporting us, we really appreciate it. But that being said, let's jump right into the conversation with Kezia Gill. Kezia, how you doing today?
I'm doing really good. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. You know, it's weird because when usually I try and do a lot of my UK interviews over the weekend, so like I don't have to feel like they're rushed or whatever before I go into the office. But today when we started talking, is that last week? I think we officially set this up. I was like, you know what? There's no reason why I can't do a morning podcast during the week. Like, I don't have to be at the office till 9:30. It gives us an hour. Like, we got plenty of time. So it's a nice change of pace. It makes me actually get up and do something instead of sitting around for 2 hours before I go to the office. So
2 o'clock here, so like I've had plenty of warm-up time.
Yeah, for sure. So like I said, really excited to have you here. Just kind of when I was trying to figure out who I wanted to reach out to on the podcast, like there's a few names on here that were on the bill for this weekend that we've had on the podcast, and so it's like I could reach out to them, but most of my audience has heard them a couple of times already over the last 6 years. So let me reach out to somebody new. And honestly, I picked your name because I didn't know how to pronounce your name. So it was just like, you know what? Let me go check that out. And I saw the Cotton Eye Joe cover. Like, yeah, it is a cover. Let's just because it's so remixed. I saw the Cotton Eye Joe cover, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And I started doing some more digging, and I was like, yeah, I definitely need to reach out to her. So for anybody that's just kind of getting to meet you for the first time or getting introduced to you, what's kind of your story? Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a singer-songwriter, and I write in all kinds of different styles, but I love country, I love Americana, I love the slightly dirtier side, so like kind of the blues and roots, and I've been writing songs as long as I can remember, really, since I was kind of at school. They weren't very good, but I was writing them. And I was from kind of a big Irish family, so there was lots of music around me. And my late dad, he was a singer as well, so I just kind of grew up watching him, and there was never any doubt that that's what I wanted to do. There was kind of never any question, and I just sort of like bumbled my way through my teens and 20s trying to figure out what kind of artist I wanted to be. I'm still very much trying to figure it out, but I think one thing I did learn is that, you know, there's only two types of music, and that's good and bad. So I tried to not box myself in with a genre or a particular sound. I just try and do whatever I feel like doing that day, and if people like it, then good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And so right now you're based out of England, you said in Derby, right?
That's right, yeah, which is like right in the middle of the country.
Yeah. Are you originally born, raised in Derby, or I know you just mentioned that your dad is Irish, right? Yeah.
So my granddad was Irish. Okay. He moved over to the UK, met my grandma, and went on to have a big old mixed family. but a lot of my early kind of musical influences were Irish traditional music. We used to go along to sort of like what they call traditional jam sessions and player sessions, and that's where I really learned to play guitar, learned to play piano, learned the kind of method of music, if you will. I actually don't read a note of music. I play everything by ear and by memory, and it was those early experiences that sort of taught me how to do that. And it's even though I'm kind of born and raised in England, I do have very strong ties to my Irish heritage for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's one of those things where I think a lot of musicians, you know, should take inspiration from their heritage as far as like musical, especially in the UK. If you're from Ireland, there's a lot of really good Irish music that I've heard, you know, just like musicians, oddly enough, musicians that I've met in Australia that left Ireland and went to Australia. Like, I don't know. Point being, just kind of taking more influence from their heritage. That's really cool.
It's very, I think any heritage is deep rooted, you know, and for me, like, because music is the main thing that I do with my life, I'm very aware of where that line of heritage comes from, and that you know, my dad always used to have this saying that, you know, it's a gift, and what you decide to do with it is up to you. So you know, it's lovely to know where that kind of comes from.
Yeah, for sure. So at what point did you start or not at what point? So what instrument did you start playing? Or like when you first started getting into music, where did you kind of start? Were you piano, guitar?
So the very first instrument that I had was a small like Casio keyboard, purely because I wasn't big enough to hold a guitar. I used to kind of play the strings, and I used to have a little tune that I could play an open tune in, but I wasn't physically big enough to hold it or get my arms around it. So I had a little keyboard, and like I said, I remember my music teacher at school briefly trying to teach me notation and how to read music, and she very quickly gave up on that. I was not interested. I wanted to listen to songs and listen to the notes and learn to play by memory. And you know, I remember I had that little Casio keyboard for years. I loved it. And then as I got slightly bigger, I think I was about 8 or 9 when I started playing around with the guitar. Again, my dad was a great player, and I sort of watched him and watched he showed me sort of how to do chords, and then he kind of said, off you go, off to your bedroom, you know, the rest is all practice. And it's the best, you know, people often say, oh, your dad must have taught you. And I say, no, he taught me absolutely nothing. He showed me where to put my fingers, and then the rest was hours and hours worth of hard work in my bedroom. And I always give that advice too when people say, you know, about how to learn the guitar. It's one of them instruments, you just got to practice it. Like all musical instruments, I suppose. You just got to practice. And I spent years you know, practicing rhythm and practicing how to change from chords. And then that took me into sort of my secondary school years when I was sort of 11 onwards. And that's when I really started writing. I got to take music as an option at school. And it was you know, I had a great music teacher that encouraged me to write my own music. And I think that one of the first songs I ever wrote was for a school project. I had to write about something, and yeah, that was my first song, probably about 13 years old, and I've never looked back. I've been writing my own music ever since.
Nice. Do you still break out that first song every once in a while and play it, or is it been long?
Do. And the mad thing is, of all the really, really bad songs that I've written in my life, the first one is actually pretty good. So yeah, I do. I still sing it now and again. Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things where you know, a lot of musicians say that first song is just so horrific, but upon occasion, you get a musician that say that they still play it because it's still pretty good. And it's like, I get that thought of people thinking it's horrendous, but sometimes you just put the most effort in that first song because you want it to be good. And like, if you're truly talented, like if you're truly gifted and talented, you know, it'll pop up and it'll stick around. And so for that first, did you ever end up recording that first song, or is it just kind of something you'll break out every once in a while live?
No, I did. And the reason being, I mean, I'd written kind of little verses and choruses, and I'd have played around with words sort of prior to this song. But the first proper song that I wrote, it was called Tomorrow They May Not Be There, and it was the idea that, you know, you need to love people and you need to appreciate them because tomorrow's never promised, which is quite a deep and resounding concept for a 14-year-old. But anyway, I wrote this song, and then about a year later, there was a competition in the city where I live, looking for young stars, like a star of tomorrow sort of thing. And I entered and I sang that song. And I went on to win that competition. And the prize was studio time, which at the time was something that I wouldn't have been able to afford or had the sort of, you know, option to do. So I got to go into the studio and record, and we got to do a little music video, which I cringe when I watch now, but it's lovely to see the 16-year-old me kind of like living her best life. But I do still have the original audio recording of that young voice. So that's quite precious to me, actually, to have that.
Yeah, for sure. And just kind of keep it close to you, because you even like just kind of having it for a personal keepsake, you know, not saying that you have to like release it and whatnot, but just kind of having it for yourself to keep yourself almost grounded to a certain point where it's like, okay, this is where I start. You know where you started because you have evidence, and then just kind of moving on from there. Yeah. So during this time when you're kind of going through the early stages of your musical journey of like discovering who you want to be as an artist, were you still very much listening to some of the Irish influences that you had, or what kind of music were you listening to just for like inspiration?
So I had, because my dad was musical, I had like a really like wealthy musical upbringing, and there was always music in the house. He was always singing, and it was everything from sort of great songwriters like Bob Dylan and Chris Christopherson, to great singers like Roy Orbison and Patsy Cline, Dolly Parton, and also like great performers like Freddie Mercury and Tina Turner. So I think all of these aspects were like, they all influenced me, which is why I feel like my sound is so mixed up. And I suppose not mixed up. I mean, the Irish traditional music was certainly what got me into playing and got me learning the guitar and learning about the theory of music, the rhythm, and how to make a guitar work for you, you know. But when I started writing, it was very much like it was Bob Dylan I'd be listening to and Dolly Parton, and a lot of those early influences were country, and some folk, and that's where I really kind of learned how to craft songs and learn that it wasn't just about writing a lot of words. It was about writing a story, and it had to have a formula, and it had to have a great hook, and it had to be memorable, and things like that. And sort of into my 20s, I would start performing, and I would, you know, recall watching sort of old Tina Turner videos and Freddie Mercury, and I'd try and work a stage. And you always take influence from people that have inspired you. So I was kind of this like country singing, rock and rolling. It was all a bit of a mix up. And then like people always ask me now, like, oh, what kind of music do you play? And I go, well, everything, because I listen to everything and I love everything. And, you know, why can't you be Tina Turner one minute and Bob Dylan the next? It's like, it's all music at the end of the day. And I'm still kind of figuring that out. Like it's my least favorite question when people ask me what kind of music I play, because I never know how to answer.
Well, and in this day in music, it's that, like, yes, in mainstream music, there's still very much an emphasis on, okay, you play rock music or you play metal music or country, you know, like whatever it is, just because that's how the industry was built, you know. And like you watch these award shows, like this past weekend was the VMAs, MTV's VMAs, and it's like, you know, they have to have those categories, best rap album, you know, like whatever it is. And nowadays you're starting to see this like resurgence or this revolution or evolution in music, however you want to kind of describe it, where musicians, yes, they can put themselves in a box if they need to for Spotify streaming reasons or, you know, whatever it is, But when they're asked what kind of music do they play, it's I'm Kezia. I play the music.
Yeah.
I play my music, because it's not clearly defined where it's like, oh, country. No, there's a little bit of blues, just like all these different influences.
It's avoiding like the really long-winded answer of, well, it's a bit blues, got a bit of rock, and there's also a bit of storytelling, so it's a bit folky. And because I find a penny for every time I'd be like, oh, I'm playing at a country festival, for example, and someone would say, oh, I don't really like country music. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not just singing country music. I'm singing my music at a country festival. Or then I might be at like maybe a rock and bike festival, so it's a bit more bluesy, a bit grittier. And then the country people will say, oh, we don't really like rock music. But I'm singing the exact same set, the exact same songs at that rock festival as I would the country or the folk festival, or just a music festival. So I think one of the best things I did was about 3 or 4 years ago, I kind of rebranded online and as a singer-songwriter, because then it allows me to write whatever I want, and I don't have to categorize it. It's just a song that I have written and I am singing. So it made life a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, doing like the solo stuff, you can kind of always default to the singer-songwriter, because that's just kind of what you are, not necessarily a genre of music.
Yeah.
But, which that's cool. Like, that's definitely cool that you can kind of fall back into a singer-songwriter realm. But I also think that a lot of people won't take that as an answer. It's like, no, like, but, that's...
They're going to have to, because it's my only answer.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So kind of fast forwarding a little bit through your musical journey, at what point did you kind of start recording and releasing music? Obviously, during school, you were doing a lot of writing and stuff like that, but at what point did you kind of start...
So I didn't really start properly recording until my late 20s. I spent an awful lot of time working abroad in Spain, specifically a place called Lanzarote, which is in the Canary Islands, and that all came about from just a holiday where I ended up getting up and singing, and the bar asked me if I'd want to come back and do some shows, and I ended up spending about 7 years there. Wow. Stayed there till I was about 26, and I call that kind of period of time like the apprenticeship. That's when I really honed the craft. That's when I learned about sort of playing to an audience. I mean, I think at one point I was doing 9 shows a week. We were doing 6 evenings and 3 afternoons. So it was where I really learned about, the stamina, how to look after your voice, how to get your repertoire together, how to keep people entertained, because especially somewhere like a holiday resort where there's a bunch of other things going on, you'd have to make sure that people are going to come and see you and they're going to come and check you out the next night. And so I learned so much during those sort of early 20s. Kept writing the whole time, and then I kind of hit, I think it was like 2013, 2014, and I was like, I'm really gonna give this original artist thing a go. I was making good money as a cover artist, but I knew something wasn't sitting right. And I was like, if I don't try and do this, I'd rather be a broke original artist than a really rich cover artist. Yeah. So I kind of threw all my money into kind of moving back and got my own place, and started recording my own music. And my first album was, if you look at it on paper, it flopped completely because I had no audience, I had no following, but I was learning all the time. I was learning about the production of music, things like mixing and mastering. Downloading was just starting to become a thing. And, my first official album that I released sort of with any kind of radio play was back in 2018. And I've gone on to do consecutive EPs since then. And as the audience grows, the kind of success of my original music grows. And I'm in a great position now, almost 8 years on, from deciding I was going to do it to where I can actually make a living as a original artist. But it took me, it was a long cold winter. It took me a long time to get here.
I feel that. You brought up something interesting about the almost internal struggle that you had of, do I want to be a successful cover artist and make this money that I'm making, or do I want to be more creatively satisfied and just, make my own music, whether it goes anywhere or not? At least I could say I tried. And I think a lot of musicians, especially maybe not so much bands, but just a lot of like individual musicians, have that internal conflict. And I think that's kind of interesting because you're the first person to actually like bring it out and say something that like you actually went through this struggle of like, okay, I'm making livable money doing cover songs and being a cover artist, but I'm not really creatively satisfied. Because like when I bring people on the podcast, they don't talk about that. They'll talk about it to me when we're off air and all this stuff about, oh yeah, I could have booked 20 shows this month as a cover artist playing at the local gig, making $500 a gig, whatever it is. And it's like, that's the stuff I want to talk about. Why didn't you, like when I asked you like a specific question, why didn't you bring it? I
mean, I think something I'm quite well known for is just keeping it real. I don't ever dress things up. And it's true. It's like, you can make a really, really good living singing at weddings and functions and in bars. And, I have massive respect for anyone that does that, because do you know what? It's hard work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time spent on the road. It's a lot of like kind of soul destroying gigs where you're singing in restaurants, or you're singing where people are just wanting to get drunk and they don't really care who you are. Yeah. And I've done many of those gigs. But it was kind of like that little girl inside me that was like, come on, like be the little girl with the Casio keyboard that had a dream. Yeah. Be her for a while. Yeah. And for a long time it was hard to turn down the money gigs. Because the truth is as well, when you are an unknown original artist, the only currency that people know is exposure. And that's quite often all you'll ever be offered, until you get to a point where you can say, look, you're going to have to cover my expenses, or you're going to have to pay me some of the ticket split or the door split, and that all comes with time. But most of the time you're just playing for exposure. So you'll play for free and you'll pay to play. Whether that means you have to get a train, or you have to drive yourself and put fuel in your car, cover your food and cover your band if they're coming with you. And, I've done all that. But I think the thing that really helped me make the decision was that I can always go back to being a cover artist. That door will always be open. I can always pick up the phone, talk to my agent and say, get me some bookings. That will always be an option. The option to be an original artist right here, right now, is only going to be here today. So I had to go with that, because I'm all about regretting doing something than not the regretting not doing it. So it paid off. It took a long time. There was a lot of tears and a lot of struggle, and there was a lot of times when I very nearly thought, this is not worth it. Nobody cares about my songs. Nobody wants to hear. Spotify and Apple are just going to swallow you whole. Nobody cares. And then suddenly you'll get a message from someone that was like, heard your song on YouTube. I just lost my dad too. I can relate to what you were talking to. Or we just got married and had your song as our first dance. And that's when you go, that's why I do it. That's why I keep on going. So it's not easy, but God, when it starts to happen, it's all the more rewarding.
Yeah, for sure. That's it. You go through this whole process of like almost doubting yourself if you have what it takes, and then you get that one message. Like you'll go weeks, months, maybe years without getting any kind of feedback, and you're just like doubting yourself, and you get that one message and it's like, okay, I'm good, let's keep going. Like, and
it is literally as simple as that. And you can be so close to giving up. You can be like, I have nothing left to give. And then one phone call or one booking, one email will change everything. Yeah. So you have to just wait for that phone to ring.
Yeah, for sure. It's actually kind of funny. This just happened to me 2 days ago. Like I was kind of hitting a low point with the podcast. I was just like, we're gaining traction, but it's like we've kind of hit a plateau this month, and I don't know if I've got like I don't know how much more I could put into this without without completely overdoing or overexerting myself and like just kind of questioning everything I've been doing. And then I got a message from another podcast that's based out of LA. They're like, "Hey man, just wanted to shoot you a message and let you know I really enjoy listening to your perspective on things. Keep doing what you're doing." And I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah. That's what I needed. So
that's all it takes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's like, obviously I'm not a musician, but like kind of similar paths there. So when you were talking about the, your first album that you recorded, that was the self-titled album, Kezia?
Yeah. So that was the first official album. Yeah. I had brought out an album previous to that, but it was more just like I just moved back from Spain. I didn't have budget, and I just had a bunch of songs that I just wanted to get out, and it was more just an album that I like sold at shows, and it was like kind of I chucked a few in the back of my car if I had a show. But my kind of debut album was the self-titled Kezia. Okay. That was the first one that I'd put out, for streaming and for download and things like that. And it was it feels like an age ago, but that was back in 2018. So
yeah,
5 years ago now.
Yeah, it's wild how fast time has gone. Like even during the pandemic, it feels like the pandemic was forever ago, and it's like still technically like a possible threat out there.
Yeah,
like when we were in lockdown and whatnot. So,
for sure.
So kind of launching off the debut album, what were some of the things that you kind of took away from the experience? Obviously, that wasn't technically, yes, it was your debut album, but really it wasn't. But what were some of the things that you kind of took away from the experience of writing, recording, releasing, promoting, that you kind of moved forward with the rest of your music? So
I'd learned kind of about, when I'd originally started writing, I was never ever writing for anyone else, anyone other than me. And I kind of learnt that actually a song needs to transpose to everyone. So I think my writing probably got less personal in terms of everything was I and, how I'm feeling. And it was more about, this is a feeling that I've experienced, and then other people could be like, do you know what, I know what she means when she's talking about that. So it'd be less specific, probably. And I also learned about kind of like the golden rules of like radio and keeping things a certain length of time. So kind of like the 4.5, 5 minute tracks were not going to work. The really long intros, the long instrumentals, all the things that I loved from an overindulgent perspective. But I started to just learn about the craft of producing music for an internet world. And also just, I was just always finding my sound and finding what worked. And very quickly, people used to say to me, oh, we know when it's a Kezia song. And I kind of learned that I adapted a style, which was lovely, because you don't sort of set out one day and say, right, I'm going to have a style. But over time, you just have your own sort of style, and people had come to know that and come to follow it. So I was obviously more conscious of making sure that I stayed true to my own sound and my own production. I've never been a fan of massively overproduced music. I know it's there and it has a place, and when I'm in the club at 2:00 in the morning, that's what I want to be dancing to. But when it comes to festivals, I think if you can't recreate the sound on the CD, then you should probably, you should stay away from. That's my opinion anyway. I'm a bit old school.
I'm of the same opinion. If you can't recreate it live, then it probably doesn't need to be on the album.
Yeah. I just think that there's always room for like a dog barking at some point or a whistle going off. But I just think, if I love the kind of the basics of music. I love a great beat. I love a great bass line. Throw a couple of guitars in the mix and just let your voice do the talking. I'm all about that. So, especially moving forward to future projects, I always start with that kind of core recipe, and then you just sprinkle a little bit of a bit of flavor, whatever it needs. Yeah. But I like when people come and see me at a show, I like them to like recognize the guitar riff straight away, recognize the drum hook straight away, and for the song not to distract from what it's about. So that's what I try and stick to that.
For sure. So kind of moving through, after you released the album, you released an EP and a few more singles, and then coming up to the pandemic. Obviously the pandemic kind of threw a wrench into everybody's plans as far as like releasing music and stuff, but it didn't, just kind of from what I've seen on Spotify, and it didn't seem to slow you down too much going into the pandemic, because you were still got a couple of songs out there, right?
Yeah, it was funny actually. I owe a lot to the pandemic. It was a time when I'd lost my dad at the start of March 2020, and like my whole world stopped when I lost dad, and then like 3 weeks later the actual world stopped. So it was a weird time, probably like more of a blessing, because my diary was so full and I had so much stuff going on. I'd had some earlier success in the year, with a single called Whiskey Drinking Woman, which ended up being playlisted on national radio, and things were really starting to hot up for me. I had some great festival bookings throughout 2020, and then my dad got really sick really fast. And I think to have continued on that trajectory with all that grief would have been really difficult. I don't know how I'd have done that. And it was almost like the pandemic offered me time to heal at a time I needed it most. But the one thing that kept me going was being able to continue to be creative. I kind of threw all that time into writing music, producing music, just making little videos, even if they were just funny TikToks. I just kept creating, kept making, kept putting content out. I ended up doing a live stream show on Facebook, which was just basically me singing some songs from my living room. We did that every Friday night for 18 months. And that was the birth of my fan club. They were known as the Friday Night Crew. We met every Friday at my place, and we'd usually have sort of 200-300 people just tuning in to hear me singing a few songs every Friday night, and it kept me going. It was just at a time when I was grieving and lost. It gave me something to focus on, and I'm so eternally grateful for that time, because without it, I don't think I'd be the artist that I am today. I grew so much in that time because I just had a chance to stop and look, and I had so much support and love from my online community. And what's so lovely is that coming out of the pandemic, that online community are now physically at my gigs. They're friends. They're people. Some people have travelled from all over Europe to come see my shows, and I greet them like old friends because I know their name. We've talked online, and those Friday Night Crew, my FNC as I call them, I've just become my family, and I love them. And they turn up in their little T-shirts with my name on them, and it's that pandemic for me was just everything I needed it to be at the right time. And I think that's why people say, oh, you didn't stop during the pandemic. I'm like, well, actually everything stopped, but the music didn't, because it was the music that kept me going. So it was a nice time in a very strange way.
First off, before we go any further, I do want to send my condolences for the loss of your father. I just recently lost my mother last year in very similar circumstances. She got very sick very quickly, and then she passed away from pancreatic cancer. So
I'm so just when it kind of creeps up on you, it gives you no warning, and then it's like, bang, this is happening, and your whole world kind of turns upside down. So I get that.
Yep. And so this was this was probably March, April 2021 when we found out. And, just the pandemic was still very much in effect. I remember flying down to Florida and being like, oh, got to wear your mask, and so a little bit of a different circumstance. Yours happened right before the pandemic, and then you kind of went into the pandemic and used that as a time to heal. I don't know what I would have done, because when I'm alone with my thoughts, a different side of Tom comes out, so. But I'm glad you were able to take that time to kind of heal and keep going with the music and come up with the Friday night crew and the Friday night streams and all that stuff. And I think I just joined the Facebook group this morning. I think I got that alert.
Yeah, it's still going strong. We've got over 2,000 members now, and they're crazy as ever, but I love them. I love them dearly.
Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, kind of going through the pandemic, you released actually quite a few singles. I'm not going to say a handful of singles, quite a few singles, but it ultimately led up to your most recent EP, The Mess I Made. Was the intent always to do singles and then just release a completely separate EP, or was it going to be an out? Like, what was kind of the thought process going through the back end of 2020 into 2021 leading up to the release of The Mess I Made?
So I'd released a couple of singles. There was a couple of songs, so Whiskey Drinking Woman, which went on to be playlisted. So the plan was to kind of do a few more singles and collate an EP. But when the pandemic hit, it kind of put a stall on everything, because I was like, I won't be able to do a campaign. I won't be able to go out and tour the EP. So I just kept doing singles. We did, there was a song called Another You, a song called Wings. And it just meant that there was constantly stuff coming up on Spotify. They were just all their own single campaigns, which we could just do digitally. And then what I ended up doing was just a physical EP, which people could order on my online store. And it was just a collection of those singles. But where the pandemic had kind of given me time to write and really start formulating more of a, sort of like new material, I said to my husband, I was like, I think I've got a new EP. Like, I think I'm not going to waste time putting out more singles. I've got this material and I want to get it out. And when we can all go out and tour again and perform, I want to have this new material ready to roll. So that's what we did. We released it in June 2021. Which was really around the time, I think May 2021 was the first outdoor live event here in the UK. So it married up perfectly with being able to take that music on the road, which I hadn't been able to do with the previous singles. But it meant that I had a whole bunch of stuff to just like be like, here I am, here's my new music. And it was brilliant. Like, I basically spent 2021 and 2022 just getting this album out there, and it's been fantastic. It's been great to do that.
And it looked like, just the limited numbers that I could see just like going through your Spotify, it looks like The Mess I Made is doing really well, and that's got to be just exciting in general. So
I mean, the thing is, like, it always becomes about numbers, and people will always look and like say, oh, how many streams has it had? I'm an independent artist, and like, I think if one person listens to my song, I'm so buzzing with that, But the response from the songs like that I get at festivals and stuff is great. But yeah, the numbers are doing okay, so I'm pleased with that.
Yeah, for sure. And so kind of going into The Mess I Made, it was like a collection of all the singles that you had released, or some of the singles, but it also had some new songs on there as well, right?
Yeah, so it was the majority were new songs, and it was the Mess I Made was just basically my way of sort of saying, look, guys, I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing right now. I'm not really sure I'm playing by the rules. I'm not fitting in any boxes, but this glorious mess is mine, and it's what I'm doing with myself. So the title track is basically saying, this is the mess I've made, and I'm going to live in it, and I'm going to own it. And then that transpired to then becoming the title of the EP. And it's just a bunch of songs which just represents the beautiful mess that I am making.
You mentioned that something about following the rules, but I've always been of the opinion that in independent music, the only people that are making rules are the people in the higher ups in the industry that are, there are no rules, essentially.
And I think that's the beautiful thing. Like, you have complete creative control and freedom to do whatever you want, and that sometimes does go against the grain. And you know, like you can look at two of my singles that came out back to back. One was called I'm Here, which is a guitar ballad about mental health. And then the next song was a great big dirty Americana blues stomping rock song called Whiskey Drinking Woman. So you could say that those two songs don't belong on the same playlist. They don't belong on the same set list from the same artist, but I play them back to back. Why not?
That's awesome. That, you know, that works. I love it. That makes so for after the mess I made, where are you kind of at now creatively? Like you just released the Cotton Eye Joe cover. You're getting ready you're in the middle. Is it middle of festival season in the UK, or is it?
We're coming towards the end now.
Okay.
Festival season usually runs sort of May through to September.
Okay.
Because it rains all the rest of the year. But yeah, we've got our last festival next weekend, which is the Blackpool Country Music Festival. And then, yeah, in terms of new music, I can't say too much, but it is definitely coming. It's coming thick and fast, hot off the press. There is going to be some big stuff coming next year, and the first kind of single is imminent. Let's just say.
Nice, awesome. Let's talk about the Cotton Eye Joe cover here really quick before we jump into the Country Music Festival coming up this weekend. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, it's just, you know, it's an homage to a song that I listened to in the 90s and early 2000s as I was going through, like, going to, like, 4th, 5th, 6th grade dances, like the secondary school time frame. And then I went through and listened to it, and I was like, nope, this is straight up cover. Like, it's one of those songs that you don't actually listen to the lyrics from the original version because you're just waiting for the one part, the chorus to hit so you could do the little dance and whatnot. And then when I started listening to the song, I was like, wait a minute, this might actually be what they're saying. So I had to, like, do a whole bunch of cross-checking to make sure that it was actually a cover song. But, where did this song kind of come out of?
So I can't actually take a huge amount of credit for this song. It was a great artist over here in the UK called Tim Protty Jones. He used to be part of the Wandering Hearts, and he was doing a concept EP, which was basically reviving cheesy 90s country music and putting it out in a way that had never been heard before. And he did a single he did Achy Breaky Heart with a girl called Jessica Lynn, who's an American artist. And it was absolutely brilliant. It was like, we all know Achy Breaky Heart, but they just put a totally different spin on it. And I thought it was fantastic. And then I basically got a message from Tim saying, you know, hey, we're working on this project. We're looking for like duets. Would you be interested? And I was like, okay, wow, loved the last one. What are you thinking? When he said Cotton Eye Joe, I was like, really? Like, how are you ever going to make that not Cotton Eye Joe? You know, it's the do-si-do track at the end of the disco. Like, I don't know how you're ever going to change this. And then he sent me the demo, and that beautiful, like, melodic violin comes in, and just the kind of the dark undertones of this guy called Cotton Eye Joe, that brought disaster wherever he went. And he played it to me, and I was like, sold. I have to sing on this. So I really, it was just a vocal contribution from me. I went into the studio, put my vocals down, and we worked together on the campaign. But all the hard work and the creative side was Tim. And even now, when people are like, "Oh, you covered Cotton Eye Joe," I just listen to it. Listen. It's certainly not a cover that you would expect, but yeah, that's just the beauty of taking a track like that and transforming it. It was a lot of fun to work on.
Yeah, for sure. It's, you know, when I went to and listened to it yesterday, I was like, I did. Obviously, admitted I didn't recognize the song, and just kind of taking out the repetitive nature of the original version of the song, you know, because they just say the chorus over and over again with, you know, but just kind of taking that repetitive nature out and adding in the violins and the, like, just slowing it down just made the song so much different.
I mean, I think like even with the lyrics, like it's such a repetitive chorus, but people never actually knew the lyrics. And as soon as I read it, and I was like, if it hadn't been for Cotton Eye Joe, I'd have been married a long time ago. And suddenly there's this story, like, who's this man? Why didn't she get married? Like, and it's like immediately when you hear that lyric, but you don't hear those words when you just hear the dance version. You know, you kind all you get is the Cotton Eye Joe. So the lyrics are kind of unveiling themselves of what lent itself to this haunting melody, and it was I'd say just such a fun project to work on.
Nice. Yeah, I like it. It just seems like it. So that's really cool that's kind of out there, and for an original artist to kind of partner on cover songs and it's not even really like you can't like it is a cover song in nature, but it's such a different song that it's like the creative artistry kind of really took place when arranging the song. And yeah, you say you didn't have much input, but like without you, the song would be completely different as well. So.
Oh, thank you. Well, when I spoke to Tim about doing it, he said, you know, that there was only one female voice he wanted on the song, which was mine. So that's really nice when you sort of like picked out of the bunch. So yeah, it was a fun project for sure.
Nice, awesome. So upcoming shows this weekend, you got the British Country Music Festival, which sadly I won't be there this year. I was really hoping to go, and I had it all planned, and then I got a notice a couple weeks ago saying, "Hey, your passport's delayed," and I'm like, "Sweet." Yeah, and luckily I hadn't like fully bought my tickets yet, as far as like air travel and whatnot, but. You know, just one of those things, it just hurt. Like, I really wanted to go. So, will this be your first time performing at the British Country Music Festival, or?
No, I actually played last year.
Okay.
I played with the full band, and I was kind of the act prior to the headline artist. So we had a really, really good slot last year.
Nice.
And it was really lovely actually, because the festival has always kind of said we don't repeat artists. We kind of don't tend to have the same artists back, but so much was the kind of response from last year and the kind of traction in the country. They've invited me back this year, but we're going to do something a bit different. I'm going to do an acoustic set, which is really nice, because there's something really magic about just taking all the songs back to you know how they first started. So I'm doing a really lovely acoustic set on the Saturday afternoon. And I'm looking forward to that, because it means I can break the songs down, I can talk about them a bit, and I'm also going to be putting a few new ones in which people haven't heard yet, so a bit of an exclusive.
Nice. This festival's indoors, right? Like, it's a little bit different than like when you think of a music festival, you think outside, big grass field, but everything that I've seen, this festival's indoors, right?
It is, and it sets it apart. I've done a lot of the outside festivals this year, and we've been blessed in the UK with a really, really hot summer. And as a ginger-haired woman, it's been intense, let me tell you. So I'm very much looking forward to the indoor. But it's a beautiful building. It's called the Winter Gardens Ballroom, and it's you know most famously used for the ballroom dancing. So it's got a spring-loaded dance floor,
nice.
And it's the most beautiful architecture, and that you've got the main ballroom, and then adjacent to that you've got the Horseshoe Pavilion, which is another beautiful room. But it just means that you can have all the kind of experience of a live music venue, but with it being a festival, you've got different acts at different times. You can move around. You've also got outlet vendors and people selling like boots and shoes, and you can get great food, and there's like loads of media outlets as well, and radio and press. So it's got all the feels of a festival, but you're in the warm, you're in the dry, and there's somewhere comfortable to sit, which when you get old like me is always a bonus.
Yeah, it's cool because weather's not an issue. Like weather's never an issue at an indoor festival. It's always never. So. The other thing that I was looking forward to is because when I talk to people that say they travel over to the UK, they go to like London, Liverpool, Manchester, and those kind of like the three big cities that people go to visit, at least from my perspective. And when I told them, I was like, oh yeah, or when I told a few of my the musicians from the UK that I've had on the podcast and I kind of just keep in contact with and whatnot, I told them, oh yeah, I'm going to, like, earlier on this summer, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to Blackpool in September. They're like, wait, you're going to Blackpool? Like, most Americans don't go there. And it's just like, that's the I don't want to say weird stuff, but like that's the offshoot stuff that I like to do, because it's not going to be like a super touristy, busy place. You know? I mean
I always say the same when I come to the States, because my husband and I love to come to the States. We've been very fortunate. We've been quite a few times. We've done all the kind of the big cities. We've done New York, we've done Chicago, Florida, Las Vegas, Nashville. But we have so much fun when we just drive. And we did a tour of like Chicago, Kentucky, Nashville, Memphis. And it was the in-between bits where we like stopped and got some food, or stayed and got a motel and then found a bar that had some great music on. And I always feel like that's the real America, because you go to New York and you see what New York wants you to see. But, you know, it's like, go to Nashville, you see what Nashville wants you to see. But you drive like 40 minutes out of Nashville and you'll end up in some little town with some dive bar, and there's some amazing players. And one of them lives next door to Dolly Parton, and one of them wrote with Willie Nelson. And I just think you got to get out of the cities. And it's exactly the same. People come to England and they go to London. Well, I can tell you, London is not England. London is what we want you to think it is. It's not. You need to go to Yorkshire. You need to go to Manchester. You need to go, you know, like you said, Blackpool, Scarborough, Newcastle. We've got some beautiful coastal towns. Blackpool is a coastal town. You know, you got to get.
That's where I was excited about Blackpool, because of the fact that it was a coastal town and that I could get like, I don't know, is seafood a big thing in Blackpool, or is it?
That's all you need. Fish and chips by the sea, and an ice cream for afters.
Yes. Because, you know, I was watching a video not too long ago about just like it was a kind of an odd video where they were breaking down the different accents in the UK, like the different types of English, I guess is the way they speak. And I was just sitting there, I was just like, what would the American version of that be? Because, like, for me, it's just like, oh, we all have different dialects. And then I started realizing that all the cities are different in the UK. Because, like you brought up, to me, London, that's the UK. And then everything else is just kind of...
And that's the thing. It's like you think of like what a massive place America is, and how different from someone that lives in California would talk to someone that lives in Alabama. How different they would sound from someone from New York. Now, we have like huge American culture in this country. Like, we all grew up watching Friends or watching CSI. So I can tell if someone's from New York. I can tell if they're from Brooklyn. I can tell if they're from Cali. I can tell if they're from Georgia. But I feel like the other way round, we all just sound British. And actually, like the Liverpool accent, the Newcastle accent, the London, the Cockney, the Scouse, the Irish, the Scottish, like they're so different. And it's always funny because, like, whenever we go to the States, people are like, oh, you're from London? I'm like, no, can you not tell?
It's so funny. Oh, man. Oh, boy.
You need more British TV programs in America, clearly.
Yeah, we do. We really... So, but I don't want to keep you too much longer here. As far as the festival goes, I hope you have a great set this weekend. And, you know, festivals are always fun, just in general. Like, every festival I've ever been to, I've never not had a good time at a festival.
It's just, you know what, it's like being an artist. You don't get much chance to socialise with other artists because everyone's always working. And festivals are just the best time to catch up with friends, other people that are on the bill, other people that are doing networking and media stuff. You know, they're there, you hang out backstage, and you get to see a bunch of people you've never seen play before. They are great fun. You'll be truly missed, Tom. I will have a whiskey for you.
Sweet. I love whiskey. I'm so sad right now.
Look, there's always next year. There's always, and I would encourage, your listeners, like, if you want good music and good times, check out some of the UK festivals. We have some incredible festivals over here.
You have some really big festivals too. Not to go off on a side tangent, but there was a festival that I was looking at last year. I don't remember what it was. I think it might have been one of the bigger festivals in UK. It was like one of the big country music festivals. And some of the names I saw on the bill, I was like, wait, what's going on here? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, C2C is probably the biggest we have. You know, this year we had like Luke Combs.
Yep.
Just the Long Road Festival, which was just this weekend. We had Marty Stewart. We had Brandy Clark.
Yeah.
We had Low Cash. And it's just like, you know, these massive American artists are coming over to England to play because we love them. We love our American music. And like I said, growing up like as a British kid, it's a lot of American culture. So the music's just a big part of that. But it's also great to celebrate all things British, and it's a really solid UK lineup at the Blackpool Country Music Festival. So it's going to be great to see what's coming out of the UK at the minute. Yeah,
for sure. It's really exciting in the country music scene for the UK, because over the last 2 years or 3 years, honestly, just kind of seeing the kind of an evolution of the UK country music scene. Even though we've talked about kind of not conforming to genres, but still, like, just as the UK kind of finds their regional sound in the country music space, it's been really interesting to kind of watch and transform.
It's a great scene, and you know, country in itself is a spectrum. You have, you know, everything from kind of your acoustic right up to your rockier stuff. So, you know, as much as I love to be floating all over the place, country will always have a huge part of my heart, and as long as I can, I'll always be bringing out country music. So it's great.
Awesome. Well, if anybody wants to check out your music or keep up with you on social or get any of your show updates or any of that fun stuff, where's the best place to get all your information? Where can people find you?
Just got to head for keziagill.com. It's everything you need is under there, and I've got my upcoming gigs and tour dates. You can buy merch. You've got all my music links, and yeah, there's not many Kezias, and there's only one Kezia Gill, so check it out.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me. It's been an absolute blast. I'd love to have you back on once the secret upcoming release, not secret upcoming release, but the upcoming project. Yeah, when you can talk about it. I'd love to have you back on. Other than that, thank you everybody for hanging out. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Kezia, thank you for your time. We really appreciate you, and we will see you all Thursday night.
Bye.
All right, cool.